Hey, I'm Kristen, and this is Haunted or Hoax. As you probably noticed, my podcast partner in crime, Jennifer, is not with me this week. Unfortunately, the holidays hit us in a big way, and we have both come down with COVID at separate times and have been unable to record. Luckily, we had one of our dress rehearsal episodes in the archives, and we've been sharing it with you guys. Now, listen, this was never intended to be shared with anyone, so go easy on us. We hope you've enjoyed the first part. If you're new here, this is not how we usually operate. Jennifer and I usually get together each week and share the history and legends behind ghost stories. I kind of go into the paranormal, the investigations, and some of the more notable legends surrounding a house or a place, and Jennifer goes into the history. This week and last week have been a little different, and we've been sharing the story of Lizzie Borden in the Lizzie Borden house. It's been a two-parter just because we've had so much information, and the second part is going to be covering the paranormal side, so I hope you enjoy.
Cheers.
Cheers. Okay, I got my wine replenished. I had a cookie. We're good to go to tell you all about the hauntings of the Borden, I almost said Bordon, Borden
We're in
house.
French and yeah.
Right. We're getting a little bit fancy. So I have a few sources for my side of things. Novelsuspects.com, the Herald News, housebeautiful.com, hauntedhouses.com, Metro West Daily News, and I'm also going to be talking about Ghost Adventures because our favorite ghost hunter, Zach Bagans, I just can't stay away from him and his takes on these investigations from season 6, episode 4. Which, if you do look up this episode that I talk about online, it will say season 5, episode 5. That is not true. It is season 6, episode 4. Had to go hunting for it. And then I'm also going to be talking about Dead Files, season 1, episode 9, which will be really fun. I have a particular feeling about that show as well. So there are a lot of haunted history about the Borden home, obviously because of Lizzie and her family's murders. But it's interesting that you started off your history with her uncle and his wife killing their 2 children and herself, because that is something that people say they experience in the Borden house is 2 little children running around upstairs, giggling and playing. They like see marbles go across the floor. People leave toys in the guest rooms for children to play with. So I thought that was very interesting that 2 of the children died and 1 survived. So there's 2 little kids at the Borden house. That seems to be like a running thing from people and guests, which I didn't understand until I did my research and you kind of went more in depth with Ludwig and Eliza. I was like, where did these children come from? Some people think that one of the children can also be Lizzie's and Emma's middle sister. I cannot remember her name. Was
Alice.
it Alice? So there's that as well. There's never been any, like, from what my research said, I have never seen any like EVPs or contacts that give the names of the children's spirits. So they're just the children that live in the Borden household. The old owners of the Borden house turned it into a bed and breakfast, or as they liked to call it, a dead and breakfast.
Super classy.
So nice. Really love that marketing angle that they took. But from Novel Suspects, I kind of read this first. It's a blog from the woman and the man, Amy and Adam, who do that show now, Kindred Spirits, which is why I said Kindred Spirits earlier. I did not watch their episodes. They have 2 episodes because they actually live close to the Lizzie Borden house. So they have 2 episodes themselves. I didn't watch them. I find them very off-putting. So I don't know why. They seem like very nice people.
It's okay. Some people just give off a vibe that doesn't jive with other people. That's perfectly
Yes.
normal.
So they went to not actually the Borden house, that's a bed and breakfast. They actually went first to Maplecroft, which is the house that Lizzie and Emma moved into after the murders. That's where they lived together until Emma and Lizzie had that falling out. Um, and that is where they believe Lizzie's ghost resides, which is conflicting because there's a lot of people who claim that Lizzie's ghost has haunted them at the Borden house, but she just won't say her name. Like she's being like sassy about it. But the Kendrick spirits, Adam and Amy, say that she is at the Maplecroft house. They say that because they brought in a medium whose name is Chip Coffee, which is just a brilliant name.
I'm sorry, is that a real name? Can
I
we see
think
a birth certificate?
I know, but I mean, kudos to your parents if that's your real name, and honestly, big ups to you if that's like what you renamed yourself when you became like a medium to the stars or something.
They couldn't have named him Joe.
No, Joe Coffee would be actually really good though. A little cup of Joe, a little cup of Joe. But he came into the house and he said that he immediately picked up a spirit of a woman who was increasingly angry, saying, "You think you all know everything, you know nothing about me." And she was screaming, "Don't help me. You think you're smart. I don't care what you think. I have to look right. I won't crack. I'm sorry." And he also says this woman's name is Lisbeth, which actually Lizzie adopted the name Lisbeth after the trials. She changed her name. So actually, I think that it's mentioned that it's on her headstone,
Yeah,
like
it
her
is.
Lisbeth. So she adopted that name instead of going by Lizzie after the trial, and that's the name that he gets from the Maplecroft house. They set up a spirit box, trying to get people talking. Some spirits kind of loosening their lips. They didn't have ghost wine, so they set up the spirit box, make it comfortable, compliment everyone, and they get through the spirit box when they ask, you're going to have a lot of people coming in here and trying to talk to you, and most of those people are going to try to talk about, and they like cut them off, and like the spirit box says directly, and he was like, yes, they're going to talk to you directly. And the spirit box said, I'm lost. And then they asked the people that own this house now, they also own the house, so the people who own the Borden bed and breakfast also owned Maplecroft. At that point, we're just collecting all the haunted, all the murder houses.
I'd like to know where people get all this money.
Me too. I don't know. We were going to go in on the Conjuring house, but that's like what, $6 million or something crazy.
And who really wants that in their estate?
I
Like,
know.
can't something like that be passed down to your ancestors? Like, you don't want to be that one family member that buys that house that curses the rest of your family, you know?
Right. I mean, there's already been 2 murders. So they keep going on this whole, like, they're trying to talk about the Second Street house, the Borden home. And the spirit box keeps just saying, don't say anything. It's not me. Please talk to them. Come back. And they ask her if she misses someone from her past. And the spirit box says, you get used to it. I'm upset. And yeah, so that's what makes them think that Lizzie's actually haunting the Maplecroft house and not the Borden house. This was just like a short excerpt from their book, Life with the Afterlife. 13 Truths I Learned About Ghosts by Amy Bruni. So if you're a book club member, you can get that. But I don't know. Because I saw a lot of other people saying that Lizzie was in her room at the Borden house. They've seen her move things, they've seen her and heard her walking around. So we already know. I don't tend to believe that a spirit can be in 2 places. I feel like, can you split your soul that way? I'm not sure. We're not
And I
talking
think
about.
the other thing to think about is that, I mean, when I read that she died and had been a philanthropist and, you know, did all this stuff with the community and left all this money to charities, like that, I mean, I know people hide stuff very well, but that doesn't sound like a suffering soul to me.
Right.
Someone that's going to, you know, hold on, especially to something that she was trying to let go of. Like, she literally changed her name.
Right.
So I feel like if anything, she would not go to the actual Borden house.
Right. And I don't even think that she would haunt Maplecroft and be like saying that she's lost or frantic or anything.
Like that she's sad. I mean, she might have been sad. I'm sure that people who kill people, she was acquitted, so she technically didn't,
Right.
based on the law. But something that was, no pun intended, but executed that severely and that passionately, like there was a lot of rage in
Right.
that. There was a reason behind it. So I don't think it would be something that somebody was remorseful over. That's just my
Right.
opinion. So I honestly,
Yeah.
I don't think that she would be haunting anything. I feel like she probably passed peacefully,
Right. That's what
especially
I
at
was
such an old
thinking.
age.
Exactly. So hauntedhouses.com did like a little bit of a rundown of Lizzie Borden's family's home. And the McGinns are the ones that actually used to own it before recently. And they kind of stated that like the lights had a mind of their own, they turned on and off. The owners would be in a room, the wall switch would flick and turn on the lights, and then no one would be upstairs on the second and third floor. And the McGinns and their staff would hear like doors opening and closing,
I'm
followed by
gonna
footsteps.
I'm gonna pause you for a second because can ghosts learn things? Because they did not have electricity.
That's what I'm thinking now. Like I was listening to your story. I was like, they didn't have electricity. So I mean, what did they go to their friend's house who had electricity? And like, oh, I know how to do this. Like,
Look at this cool light switch.
dad never let us have this. Let me do this. I don't know. That's so strange. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they
I mean,
can.
yeah, and it could be like an energy surge.
That's true.
I'm just being
But they're
I'm just
seeing
being
like
sassy.
but they're seeing the light switch go up. That's what they're saying.
Now I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't
I don't know.
know. Sometimes the guests and staff can feel someone brush against them on the stairs in various parts of the home. A shadow of a woman and an actual apparition that looks like Lizzie has been seen in the basement by owners, staff, and guests. Disembodied voices are often heard, and the owner, Leanne Wilbur, who I will mention later, start your own file cabinet,
Mhm.
um, felt cold touch of a finger run down her back. And when she turned around, no one was visible. They claim that there are a few entities at the Borden bed and breakfast. Andrew Borden, the father, Abby, the stepmother, Lizzie, the entity of Maggie's cat. There's a cat spirit there, which is supposedly very, very friendly. Maggie was also like the nickname of Bridget, apparently.
Oh, I forgot to put that in. It was
Yes.
not the nickname.
Oh.
It was the name of their old maid,
And they
like
just
their old
forgot?
servant. Well, no, they would call Bridget Maggie out of almost like disrespect.
Oh my
Like, I'm not going to bother learning your name because she was also an Irish immigrant.
God.
So I'm going to call you Maggie instead of Bridget. Like, they didn't actually call her Bridget. And it wasn't the whole family, it was just Lizzie and Emma.
Lizzie and Emma were little bitches. Sorry. Sorry.
I
But
mean, it's
they
super
were.
disrespectful. It's like, you remember that guy that would never call me by my name? And eventually you were just like, you know her name. Like, you've known her for years.
Right.
But he thought it was so funny to just literally call me every other girl's name than my actual name. And it's like, you're not cute.
That's not funny.
It's
That's
just
rude.
fucking obnoxious.
I mean, I get that all the time. For some reason, everybody cannot say Kristen. I always get Christine or Crystal or Christian.
Jessica.
Yeah.
Every single time.
It's not
Jessica.
nice. It's
But
not
he
nice.
would purposely do it.
Right. And that's even worse.
So
That's
they were doing it almost like we don't even care to call you by your real name.
well, okay. So, and then the entity of Bridget, we're not going to call her Maggie because that's awful. Bridget is also said to be there. An EVP recording captured was a horrified scream of a man come quick, which is supposedly Bridget screaming when she found the body of Abby. And there's also an apparition scene of a woman dressed in maid's clothes, seen doing her chores around the house, which is odd because like the staff doesn't wear period appropriate clothing. Like, they're
Mm-hmm.
not trying to do something like that.
Yeah.
So those are kind of like the main rundown things of spirits that they've been seeing. Those are like key players. Most of the things that they do are like the footsteps and disembodied voices, and they see some shadow figures. And then Zach Bagans comes to Massachusetts. And it is season 6. So it's an early season. So we have, Aaron, Nick, and Zach, which are just my favorite seasons. They were a perfect trio. We understand fully why Nick had to leave. He just couldn't take Zach anymore. I totally get it. I miss him though. We hope you're doing well. But in the beginning of this episode, they had the old theme music, the theme, like the whole
Yes.
intro. And Zach says, you've reached your final destination, hell. And it was like setting the tone for this whole thing. Though, I mean, it's already like you already get prepared for the ridiculousness that's going to happen. But in this episode, Zach immediately is like, there's demonic forces. Like he's suggesting heavily that demonic forces are in the Borden house and that they are the influence to all the like violence that has gone on through the last 150 years. Interesting that nobody has murdered anybody else since then that we know of. So I don't know, was this demonic force cleansed?
Well, nobody's really lived in the house since then, right?
Well, I mean, people stay there often, like almost every day, and the owners say that they spend a lot of time there. So I don't know.
I think from what I understand about demonic entities is that you have to, like, the longer you're exposed to them,
Right. The more
the
that
worse
they
it
can take it.
gets.
Right.
So, I mean, honestly, Eliza and Lodwick didn't live in there very long. It was, let's see, the house was built in 1845,
Right.
and then the murder happened in 1848. So, I mean, that's still
A good few
like a
years.
couple years living in the house. So, I mean, I could see it being like an exposure thing. Because if you're there, like you're only renting a room for the night. I don't think anybody does an extended vacation at the Lizzie Borden house.
True. I mean, you
But you're
really
right,
could.
like the employees do stay, like spend a lot of time there.
Right. And they have like a night manager who I'll introduce later. They have a night manager who stays there overnight a lot, like nearly every night.
Hmm.
So I feel like at nighttime, it feels like things should be happening to him. I mean, they do, but like not. I'm just not sold on the demonic forces right off the bat with Zach. So, but we'll go into a little bit further. Their guide is Leanne McGinn, who is the owner, and she is guiding them through the house. And she is so fucking weird. Like I was like the more we spent time with her, I was like, maybe there is a demonic force because you are freaking me out. She keeps making like this really weird facial expression, and she's like looking at Zach like with her eyes like wide open and like with this creepy smile. At one point, she's holding one of the like axes, and Zach is like, maybe you should give that to me. And she's like, no. And they like kind of struggle over it. And she's like, okay, whatever. Maybe I've been in this house too long. Like she's really playing it up as being just really, I don't know, around the bend. She was very uncomfortable making. But she shows them upstairs to the guest room where Abby was murdered. She kind of gives them the lowdown. They keep saying the murderer because they don't say Lizzie. They call this an unsolved case, which technically it is.
Mhm.
Because Lizzie was acquitted. And they keep saying the murderer, but in all the reenactments that they do, it's a woman
Oh,
killing
yeah.
another woman. So it's Lizzie killing somebody. So bias is like supposedly not there, but it's really there. Aaron is, while they're talking about the murder of Abby and how horrific it was, Aaron is like, well, maybe it was a lot of aggression, like a passionate murder.
Mhm.
And Zach is like almost immediately like, or possession. Like just he is not gonna let go of the demon thing. That's his thing. Then they bring in, see, this is when Ghost Adventures did a lot of actual interviewing people.
Mhm.
Like truly half of the episode was them interviewing people, and then the next half was them investigating. Now I
Mhm.
feel like it's 90% of the episode is Zach talking about himself, and then 10% of the episode is actually ghost stuff. So they meet with Matt Manes and Tim Weisberg, who are paranormal investigators in the basement. They describe witnessing a woman being scratched there while they're investigating.
Mhm.
Um, and she's obviously very distraught. Like she gets scratched. She starts like, getting really scared. And Tim tells the spirit to pick on someone their own size, which you can't really see the spirit. How big do you think they are? Like, I don't know. You can't tell. And he's pushed against a wall. He's pushed against the wall, like with his arms up.
Oh, geez.
And they say, Matt says that you could actually see handprints on Tim's elbows from like the force of which he was pushed back. No pictures were taken of the handprints. I tend to lean more towards believing like scratches and handprints and things like that when I see photographic evidence.
Mm-hmm.
When it's not provided to me, I come like, okay, well, you could just be making that all up. So they also talked to Eleanor, who is a tour guide who hates the basement because she went down, and as she was coming back up, she heard someone coming up behind her, like footsteps, like really close.
Mm-hmm.
And it really freaked her out. So she started running back up the stairs, and it sounded like somebody started running after her.
Everybody's worst nightmare.
I know. I have experienced that in my own childhood home. It's the worst feeling when you feel like you have to get up the stairs so quick because somebody's going to get you.
Get up fast enough.
No. They also talked to a psychic whose name is Liz. She claims that they had a seance at the Borden house, which I cannot stress enough. Do not do seances
No.
in haunted houses. Don't do
In
seances
general.
at all.
No.
I am not on the seance train. I know
No.
it looks like kind of fun in movies, but it's not. They talked to her though, and she says that she got disoriented and everyone became blurry during the seance. Like to her, like her eyes started blurring,
Mm-hmm.
which, same today, me. And she had to leave. Later, Matt claims he and two others were in the room, and suddenly a camera they had stationary turned and focused, like refocused. Like they had a camera on the floor,
mm-hmm.
and nobody was by it, and it just turned.
Stop.
Yeah. And so somebody noticed it and said, "Oh my gosh, what happened? Did somebody step on a cord or something?" And I was like, "No, nobody was near it." So they turned it back. And they turned it back, and as he was walking away after he turned it back, it turned back again.
No shit.
Yeah.
So maybe they do know how to turn on lights.
Right. I mean, they're learning.
Clearly they're videographers now. They know how to work a light switch.
Well, and the interesting thing is that like they did have this on videotape. The videotape was still recording. So that it does, you can see it move. Can you see the back? If somebody's standing behind it? They claim it's flush against a wall, but I don't know. It was kind of creepy. I did kind of like that. I was very intrigued when I saw that footage. Then
that would be enough for me to leave.
Right. Yeah. Go.
And leave the camera. Like they clearly want the camera. They want to figure out what's going on with it. So leave the camera, go check in at the Holiday Inn, come back tomorrow.
Lizzie wants to vlog. Just let her vlog. It's fine. They also interviewed the owner's teenage daughter, Kat. She was in Abby's bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
No, the guest room that Abby was in, and they had like some of her jewelry on display, and Kat was like, I guess, going to touch one, and she felt somebody pull on her ear from behind, as if to like get her to stop touching things that aren't hers, which is a good lesson. Don't touch things that are not yours, especially haunted things.
Are you making note? No seances, no touching haunted jewelry.
Yes. This is a survival guide to your haunted stay at the Borden household. Kat's sister doesn't like going into the house because when she was 7, she passed out in one of the bedrooms.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't remember a lot of things when I was 7. So, I mean, people have really good memories. So she could totally remember passing out at 7, or it could be something that her parents told her,
Kristen.
and they were embellishing it.
I remember the beginning of our friendship.
I will never forget you, and I remember.
Now I feel like you're just blowing smoke up my ass. You can't take that back.
No, I do. I remember some things, but I don't think I would remember every little thing about being 7. I don't know. It feels like
something as big as like passing out, I feel like would probably have a pretty emotional impact on you, especially at a haunted house, you know?
I guess.
I would like to know the context, like what was going on during, like, did she walk in and she just passed out?
No, they went up to, so their dad was having, like, they were all going to stay there for the weekend. And their dad was having them go up to the guest room that they were going to stay in, not Abby's guest room, but another guest room. And they were setting down their things. And then she said suddenly she got cold and she passed out. Um, but they do meet up with their researcher Jeff Ballinger at the Oak Grove Cemetery, who ends up explaining to them the whole story of why there could be two kids at the Borden house, because there was mention of that earlier in the episode when they were interviewing people. He tells them about Andrew's or Lizzie's uncle, and the three children in the well, and one lived, and she then killed herself. He says the version of the story where Eliza slit her own throat with a straight razor. That's how he says that she killed herself.
There were stories of her going back behind the house and committing suicide, and there were stories of her going up to the bathroom and using his straight razor to slit her wrist or throat. The story has just been like hearsay over the years. I don't think it was ever actually documented.
Yeah, and honestly, again, it doesn't really matter. Like, suicide is an awful thing anyway. It doesn't matter how somebody took their own life. But Zach, of course, questioned if this whole ordeal was caused by a demon, or would put a curse on the house after the murder of two children and suicide of their mother. And so they begin lockdown. They set up all the cameras. I kind of skipped through the lockdown because it's just them fucking around with the lighting and everything. And as much as I love their little banter, I was like, I've had too much of this. They did this whole thing in the cemetery where they walked around with trying to find this guy, because the cemetery is huge. They all went in different directions, and both Nick and Aaron's quiet, because Aaron I feel like he's the only one that's a little bit not crazy. And they're all walking around with their own camcorders, and Zach and Nick start doing like these existential philosophical rants about like how their bodies are going to decay in a graveyard someday, and where will their souls go? Will they be lost? And like, it was the most, I was like, why are we doing this right now?
I also watched that episode, and I was dying because they were having this like deep, interspiritual, like looking into themselves moment, and then all of a sudden Aaron turns the camera and he's like, I found Woodcock.
Right. Exactly. I was like, this is a weird turn for this show. What are they talking about? It was so like out of left field. I kind of loved it, but I was like, okay, I watched that.
Thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, I was like, I don't want to watch the whole setup because I don't want more of that. So we get to lockdown. Right before lockdown, Zach invites Liz to do a seance in the house later that night. And
don't do that, kids.
No, don't do that. And especially don't do this part, because Zach says Aaron can be the target of the seance, and any negative energy can go to him. And Aaron has headphones in, so he can't hear this. And he's like, oh yeah, whatever, I can hear you guys.
That is not a good friend, friends.
Right. Don't be a friend like Zach is to Aaron. I feel so bad for him. We are Aaron fans here. He has put up with a lot over the years. So, but don't do that. I said in my notes, I said, Zach says Aaron can be a target of the seance because he's a jerk.
Let me just be clear about something. If you push any negative energy towards me in any of these ghost tours, all 2,000 years of our friendship is also going to be pushed out the door and into some negative energy, because I will not be friends with you anymore.
If you tell a ghost to square up on me, I'm going to square up on you, just to let you know.
An eye for an eye, a bad energy for bad energy.
Exactly. I would never do that to you. but Zach would. um,
Little asshole.
right. Um, so we get to lockdown. We start with a REM pod, which is one of those things that has like antennas on the end, and then like it lights up according to like spirit energies that go through it, or touching it. It lights up and makes a very annoying high-pitched noise. I don't like the REM pod. It grinds my gears, but they use it. And he asks if the spirit would like to do harm to them. And he says, touch it or make it light up once for yes, twice for no. And he asks the first question of, would the spirit like to do harm to them? And it says yes. And that is a point where I would be like, lockdown is over, we have to leave. But Zach doesn't do that. He says, if it's the murderer, he asks if it's the murderer of the Bordens, and the REM pod says yes, it lights up yes. And they ask if it's evil, and it says no, which that's kind of conflicting information here. It's also in between the questions, kind of like going off a lot, and making that sound for way too long. And after it says no, it starts doing that long drawn out light and noise. And so Zach starts to get closer to it. He says it's freezing. Aaron gets the chills. They're all reassuring us that no windows are open and the air conditioning was turned off and it shouldn't be that cold in there. I don't remember when they went to the Borden house, like what season it was, but it's Massachusetts. That's kind of chilly a lot. So it could be that the house, even without air conditioning, is a little bit drafty. We don't
Or
know.
it's a do demons make things cold, or is that just a ghost thing?
I think it's just a ghost thing.
Hmm.
I think it's just a
Somebody
ghost.
somebody tweeted us.
Yes, or a DMS or something. Then they go and move on to an EVP. They ask if the spirit killed Abby or Andrew. And Nick says, I want to talk to the dark man who haunts the place. They don't hear any voices on that EVP. Then they hear like unexplained shuffling, and then Zach gets a hissing noise on his recorder as he gets closer to that shuffling noise, which you watched the episode. That hissing noise made me laugh. Did that make you laugh? It made me laugh because it really what sounded like it was like there was shuffling and then it went like it was it was like the most like it sounded like somebody was beyond the door going
Ah, hiss.
it sounded like somebody was making it with their mouth. It sounded like a human doing it, so I guess that
Well,
could be creepy.
yeah, and I mean it could have been a human doing it.
That's what I was like, where are the assistants? He asks what it was. Oh, he asked what the hissing was to the spirit, like trying to get a reaction. And then they all hear footsteps and they say it's coming from Abby Borden's room, which is actually the guest room. Abby did not stay in that room. She was just making it up for the day. She stayed in the master bedroom with Andrew, was what the impression I got. I don't think that Abby stayed in that room.
Well, it wouldn't have been called the guest room if it was Abby's room, right?
So I think that like they call it Abby's room because she was killed there, not because she actually resided in there. But they go up to Abby's room and Nick claims that it's making him dizzy. But they still take out the recorder and try to taunt the spirits. He gets one EVP that when he's asking if they can help find closure, they claim it's saying, I'll take you to heaven. So here's a trick that I tell people when they're watching these kind of ghost shows is close your eyes. Because if you watch the ghost show and they're about to show an EVP, they most likely always put like words to go with the EVP, and it tricks your mind into hearing that. So if you close your eyes while you're listening to it, you can actually see if you actually hear something or if it just sounds like somebody knocking something around. That is my tip for you. No seances. What else did we say? Don't
touch haunted jewelry.
Don't touch haunted jewelry. Listen to EVPs with your eyes closed. But
this will be included in our book that we're releasing.
Yes. Quick guide to sussing out hauntings. It sounded like something falling to me. It didn't sound like words. If anything, I can see I'll take you, and I would have heard hell, not heaven. It sounded more like a short word at the end of that sentence.
See, I listened to it and I do the same thing. I look away and listen. And I heard, "I'll take another."
Oh,
But it was like, now that you've said it sounded like something falling, I could hear that too.
yeah, it sounded like something falling to me rather than words, but I'll take another could be interesting too.
Maybe they were looking for more ghost wine.
Maybe. Ghost wine would be so good. I hope that's in the afterlife. Zach goes into another bedroom. This house is very confusing. And I wish I had a blueprint because you probably do. But
I
I
do.
did not. But he goes into another bedroom where he claims he hears laughter, but it's not on the audio camera, the audio of the camera. So we don't hear the laughter, but he says it is there. Which, do we blame spirits for laughing at them? No, we don't. We laugh at them. I mean, it has to
Do
be
we laugh
good.
at them?
I laugh at not at spirits, at Zach.
Oh, oh.
No, we don't
I
laugh at
do
spirits.
not laugh at ghosts, but
No,
I
no.
do laugh at Zach Bagans a lot.
Yes, yes, yes. We laugh at Zach, not at ghosts. But Nick and Zach continue to taunt. Like I forgot in the earlier seasons that they taunt people. They taunt the spirits hardcore a lot. Zach hears some unexplained noise going on outside the bedroom that he's in. So he starts to walk towards it. And it's it's a weird noise. It's again, it sounds like something's falling. And once he pans back to the room that he was just in, we see a drawer of a nightstand open that wasn't open before. It takes Zach Bagans a very long time to see this drawer. I He turned around and I was immediately like, oh, why is that drawer open? And he like goes into the room and looks around a little bit and then he walks by the drawer again
All
and then he
right,
turns
listen.
around.
It's dark.
I know, but still, like,
I know. I did the same thing. It's like that was that drawer open when he went in there? Can you run that footage back so I can see if the drawer was open?
right.
All of a sudden, I realized that that drawer was open.
Oh my God, I love your impression.
Damn it, you're
um,
so smart, Zach.
right. And so I was like, how is he this blind? That's why he needs those thick glasses. Um, he he also while he's like doing this whole thing, they have like closed caption of like Nick talking downstairs, and he's again just spouting off this very like philosophical like where do we go when it all ends and like we have to think, and I'm like, are you having a therapy session with the spirits of this house right now? I don't understand. um and Zach is ignoring it. I don't know. They then get to the seance with Liz, and then Eleanor from the tour guide is there for some reason. And it's just because Zach really likes bringing elderly people into these situations and like putting them in danger. That's the only thing I can think of. They they attach a recorder to the murder weapon and put it in the middle of their circle. I feel like that's so disrespectful.
I'm just going to interject an alleged murder weapon because the actual murder weapon was never discovered.
Oh, interesting. They call it the murder weapon. So they're
That's why
lying.
in the autopsy it says a sharp object. They
Like an axe or a
checked.
hatchet.
They checked the axe for blood. They just found rust. Obviously, they didn't have luminol back in the
That's
day.
true. And they weren't going to go into that bloody bucket of rags.
No, it's probably where the murder weapon was.
Right. But they attach it to a axe, which I still think is just in bad taste. I just don't like it.
Oh no, the whole thing is in bad taste.
Right. And Liz calls upon Andrew Borden. She claims he only picks on girls. And while everybody's downstairs, a camera on the and the EVP in the attic gets the same drawer that opened earlier opening again. It sounds like it. They also get an EVP that says, keep on killing, keep them coming. That's what they claim it says. I have to admit, like, these are not the clearest EVPs that I've seen on a Ghost Adventures episode. I was having a really hard time because I would listen to them with my eyes closed and then play back what they thought it said, and it was not matching up. I don't think it
Mm-hmm.
said keep them killing, keep them coming. I really couldn't understand anything that they were saying, and I was like, maybe I'm just really
Well, I
shit
think,
at this.
well, no, and I think that sentence fits his narrative of
Yeah,
something there taunting people to commit murder.
right. Back downstairs with the seance happening, everyone starts feeling not well in the living room except for Aaron. Aaron's very quiet in this episode, and he's just kind of like letting things happen and unfold, and I kind of like it. Um, Nick claims he sees somebody in the doorway. The air is going cold around them. They bust out the spirit box. As soon as they turn it on, a male spirit says that they're all together. They say they get another voice that says, "Thank you, Zach." I did hear they're all together, and I did hear "thank you." Didn't hear really Zach until they like replayed it like twice, really trying to convince me that it said Zach. But it's all about Zach, so it probably did thank him for something. Thank him for what? We don't know. Um,
Sacrificing Aaron.
right. They ask if they know the spirit box, if they know the name of who was murdered here, like the family name. And it says Borden. And while they're asking, a flashlight on the ground randomly turns on. And those are the type of things that I like. I like when like there's obviously something very far away and it just comes on or like comes to life, like toys turn on and stuff. Those things are what really gets me. Like that makes me feel like, okay, like something's happening here. So when the flashlight turned on, I was kind of like, and then while that happens, they get an EVP that says, "Tell them about the girl." They say, again, this spirit box, the "tell them about the girl" was very faint. I did hear tell them about. I did not hear girl. I heard tell them about it. Again, it could just fit into their narrative of telling them about Lizzie. They go back to the spirit box. They forget about the flashlight. Nobody bothers with the flashlight. I think the flashlight's the coolest thing. They just forget about it. And they ask a few more questions. They hear Abby's name twice. They ask if Andrew is there, and a male voice says maybe. And they ask who attacks people there, and a voice says Lizzie, allegedly. Zach then stands with the axe and asks them to take it from him, like the spirits, which I feel is very aggressive. We should be not aggressive with spirits, especially if you think one of them axe murdered two other ones to death.
Or if you think there's a demon in the room.
Exactly. He loves to taunt demons. Nick and Liz say that they feel a lot of anger and despair. Not to be outdone, Zach suddenly starts feeling very angry while holding a hatchet. Like, Nick, this whole time consistently is like, I feel sick. I feel very like uncomfortable. I feel despair. And then as soon as I guess Zach realizes that Nick is getting a little bit more attention, he suddenly is like, "Oh yeah, I'm very angry too. I'm getting dizzy and disoriented." And it's like, dude, come on. Can somebody just have their own experience for 2 minutes?
It's
No.
impossible.
Liz, the medium, keeps hinting at a secret that Andrew Borden has. She keeps saying that, do you want me to tell them why you might have been murdered, everything like that. They say that they won't publicize the secret that Liz says that would be a possible motive to Lizzie. And then literally 3 minutes later, they basically spell it out by saying the R word, implying that Lizzie was inappropriately touched by her father and there was some incest going on, which they're like, well, we're going to be sensitive and not bring it up. And then they bring it up anyway. So, I mean, don't say you're not going to bring it up and then just bring it up. That's the
We're
rule number
going to
4.
be respectful of a spirit that can't defend itself, and we can't share what Liz disclosed as.
And then they
And then
disclosed it.
she goes and yells it.
Right. And then she just yells it and they don't like bleep it out or anything. They're like, well, if she's going to say it, not our
And
fault.
did you notice that when, as soon as she said it, she covered her face?
Yeah. Do you think that it's because she was laughing?
No, it looked like she was bracing for impact. Like,
Oh, like somebody, like a spirit was
I
going
don't
to
really want to
come.
be doing this.
Right. They catch an EVP that seems to be directed at Liz, the medium, and they claim it says dirty horror, which is just very, I don't know. And they're like, oh, this is definitely directed at Liz, the medium. It's like, that is very rude. And then they continue to they like continue to talk about the secret that Liz is revealing. And Liz is like saying that Andrew is cursing at her because she's a medium and she can get those sorts of messages. And she's complaining that he's swearing at her. And then an EVP picks up "Go Ahead and Cry," which that was the clearest one that I heard in this episode. I did hear "Go Ahead and Cry" when I listened to it. Nick starts standing up and like walking around because he's feeling really sick. And so a minute later, Zach is also claiming to have visions and being sick at the same time as Nick. Liz and Eleanor leave and lockdown is over. They have a little bit of like a extra little tidbit where they go into more detail about how sick they were feeling at the very end of the episode. Like they've already moved on. But that's pretty much the end of it. That was Ghost Adventures. I did like a lot of they got a lot of sounds, which is consistent with other people's reports. Like they did get the footsteps and they did get things dropping. They did get some voices. So everything was very run of the mill. There wasn't anything like, oh, well, I don't know, I felt a stabbing sensation, or like at the back of my head. Nobody said that.
Or a table lifted up.
Right. Nobody levitated or anything. So strangely enough, for all of Zach's like boasting that it should be a demonic force or it could be a demonic force, they don't really mention that at the end of the episode. And I don't really see any evidence of demonic activity personally. I'm not a demonologist, but it didn't seem like a demonic sort of haunting to me.
So I was curious. I tried to dig into like who built the house and like the origin of it. The house was built in, like I said, 1845. And, Eliza's murders and suicide was shortly thereafter. So I imagine that they were the first family to live in the home.
Right.
But he also went through 2 other wives in the meantime, and he didn't have any other children, and nothing bad happened at that point.
And I don't blame him for not having more children because it's very traumatic to lose 2 of your children in that way.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
I don't know. I was wondering kind of like the history, like what could have caused some sort of demonic possession there, because I thought it was strange that it was a family and B in the same home.
Right. And, Zach Bagans usually tends to lean towards like everything is a demon. And also it's in Massachusetts, Salem is there. Everything kind of goes, people like to connect everything back to like satanic rituals and witches. So I can see why somebody would want it to be a demonic haunting. I just don't feel like it is. And that all doesn't change, but you would think it would change with the Dead Files episode that I also watched, season 1, episode 9. It's their first season. It's got Amy, the medium, and Steve, who is a retired homicide detective. And their whole thing is that Amy goes into houses, generally like not famous houses. She goes into houses completely blind, like she doesn't know anything about the house. Her creepy husband goes in before. I say creepy because I don't know, he looks normal, but I don't like him. He's very weird. He doesn't say very much. I think it's because he doesn't talk very much. He's just like this foreboding presence that's on my TV screen. I'm judging a lot of people today, but it's fine because I'm perfect.
It's okay. You're reading, you're reading energies.
Yes, I am also an empath.
Yes.
Ew. But so her husband usually goes in and like takes pictures off the wall identifying things, so she'll be going in blind. But this was like a special, like a mid-season special to do the Lizzie Borden house. So Amy and Steve actually don't interact at all during their investigations until they come together with the owners of the home and like share what they have to like see if they match up. Kind of like what we're doing a little bit, except I'm not a medium and you're not a homicide detective, sadly enough. So Amy and her creepy husband go into the Lizzie Borden house. All the lights are off. She immediately goes into the house and says she wants people to go crazy. She says she causes hallucinations for people and that the spirit is disturbed and that she's crawling through the walls. Okay?
Crawling.
Yes. Oh, that's right. Like turning on the flashlight in Ghost Adventures.
That's enough of crawling around things.
um, I did make a note that the first season we get prime Amy expressions. Amy has a very expressive face. If you've never watched Dead Files before, I highly recommend you do it with friends when you want to get drunk and you play the Amy expression drinking game. And it's basically take a drink whenever she makes a face that looks like she's disgusted at something. Take a drink whenever she looks like she's scared, and then finish your drink if her eyebrows meet her hairline, because that happens a lot. She has the funniest.
Really tall eyebrows or a really low hairline.
She has a very interesting face altogether, and it just contorts in ways that I don't think I've ever made in my entire life. She cannot control her expressions, and I totally get that. But it's very fun. And surprise, we see Leanne again. Leanne McGinnis.
Oh, no kidding. Is she just as crazy?
No. Okay. So Leanne is the best actress I've ever seen on TV. She should win an Emmy because she is in this episode and she's so calm. She's so like soft and calm, which makes sense because Dead Files is a bit of a more like soft, creepy show than Ghost Adventures is. But she's so nice and is very down to earth. And it's really weird. When she came onto the screen, I was like, hey, I know you. Oh God, I'm going to see you be like crazy again. And she was like, no, she was fine. She says that she's experienced sickness and nausea, hard to breathe when staying at the bed and breakfast. She says that she was making up a bed and she felt like when she bent over to make the bed, she felt like she was suffocating. So she pushed up and it felt like somebody hit her in the chest and like knocked the wind out of her. And she ended up falling to the floor and starting to cry because it was a very like overwhelming, sad feeling once she got hit in the chest. Steve is just standing there, listening to her, speechless, because he doesn't really ever say anything. He just looks like vaguely concerned at what they're telling him every time they say something. And that's like his MO. Like Amy's got all the expressions, he's got none of the expressions.
Well, if he's a homicide detective, he can't give anything away.
That's true. He's just very good at his job. They pan back and forth between Steve's interviews and then Amy's experiences as she walks through the house. Amy is still saying that there's a woman who's crazy. She doesn't like it because she's being touched. A woman's spirit is said to be seeping out of the ceiling, making her physically ill. This is in Lizzie's room. We then go to the guest room or Abby's bedroom. Amy says that she's scared of the crazy lady and says that she's growling and drooling. Like she's describing a completely unhinged sort of like spirit.
Is this a different spirit or is it the same spirit she's been seeing?
It's the same spirit she's been seeing. It's like crazy.
Well, because growling and drooling, like I imagine if you've been, and you saw the pictures, if you've been hit in the back of the head, like you're gonna lose.
Yeah. But so she does say that like that the crazy lady growling and drooling is in Abby's room. The crazy lady, supposedly the same lady, is seeping through the ceiling in Lizzie's room. So it's like following her around throughout the rooms. They go back to Steve, who's still with Leanne, and they go to the cellar, which is like the basement where we were in Ghost Adventures with the two investigators. Leanne describes an investigative group that left abruptly at 2 a.m. out of the cellar door. She comes in and locks up the house after they left, and she closes that door. And then she comes down the next morning to get something, and there's a swarm of flies at the door, like a swarm of flies, with no explanation. Right. And she's like, there's no explanation. It's never happened before. It never happened again. and there was like nothing dead around, so they're at a loss. Back at Amy's walkthrough, she and her creepy husband are in the sitting area, the drawing room, I think they call it. And she says that Leanne doesn't know what she's dealing with. And Amy wants to move the couch. She just really wants to move this couch. She's like, we have to move it. We have to move the couch. The couch that is a replica of
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Borden, where he died. So her husband moves it. He's very helpful. Still off-putting, but he's very helpful. And she finds a perfectly placed Ouija board underneath it, which I've seen in other accounts that there are Ouija boards throughout the Borden house. And somebody actually stole one and sent it back saying, please take this thing back, like begging them, like, we're sorry, please take this back, because they stole a Ouija board from the Borden house.
I'm gonna add that to our list of things not to do.
Don't take a Ouija board. Don't touch a Ouija board. Don't look at a Ouija board. It's got strong vibes and they're all bad. And then we have a few accounts that Steve gets from the night manager and from two guests that see a tall shadow man. They see him like go dart between doorways and at the top of stairs. Amy sees the tall man as she's going up the stairs towards the bedrooms, and she doesn't think he likes women very much. The night manager implies that this shadow man, this tall shadow man, is Andrew Borden, which seems to be confirmed because Steve later goes to a historian who has a picture of Mr. Borden, and
Mm-hmm.
she describes him as a very tall, lanky man, very serious. She does mention that he like was on a bunch of banking boards, which I guess like is why he would go to the banks all the time and spend a lot of time running his
Mm-hmm.
errands there. So while he's like talking to that woman about how tall and lanky and dark this shadow man and Andrew have in common,
He sounds like a keeper.
right? Tall,
Tall,
dark,
dark, and
and
lanky.
lanky. Um, in the master bedroom, Amy is like scrunching her nose like up into her face, like it's gone, because she's saying that she is feeling a lot of fighting and stress in the bedroom, a lot of male and female physical fighting. She sees a man smacking a woman and pulling her hair. This is to imply that Andrew was abusing Abby.
Mm.
I don't know if you got that in any of your history.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I didn't really see a lot of evidence of him abusing his wife either. The historian that Steve talked to did say that Mr. Borden was a tough nut. He was a very serious man. So, but she never said that he was abusive towards Abby.
So, a little tidbit in the testimony that I read from Emma
Mhm.
was that Mr. Borden was wearing a ring when he died. And it was a ring that was actually given to him by Lizzie many years ago. And she said that he wore it every day since Lizzie gave it to him. So he did have like a tender side to him. I think he really did
Yeah.
love his daughters.
Yeah. I mean, they, yeah. This is why I had a problem with this episode, because it just kind of keeps going into like a downward spiral. Amy claims that she then hears a female who is stressed and tired. She describes the woman as listless with dark hair and petite, like short, but she's full figured, and she's frazzled and doesn't want to do it anymore. Like she's very distressed and says like she just doesn't want to do it anymore. She doesn't want to be here anymore, some kind of thing. They kind of speculate on why Lizzie would have done the murders. The historian that Steve talks to says she thinks it would be for money.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, that's the motive that she goes with. Amy keeps talking about like a lot of beatings and very like violent sexual assaults, um, and people being tied up.
Mm.
And she mentions incest again, which people do mention that's like a theory of like it is something that could have happened, is the incest. There's no proof of that though. And that's never been like confirmed or denied by Emma. or
Mhm.
even Lizzie.
Mhm.
They could have said it afterwards on their deathbeds or something. Nobody's ever talked, like nobody close to the family has ever talked about it. They come together in the end of the episode to do the sit down. I usually don't like the sit downs except for the part where she like has a person draw what she saw, because
Mhm.
sometimes the pictures are so funny. But I have the picture. It's towards the end of the episode. So she gets a drawing of the woman who doesn't want to do it anymore, the frazzled woman. So this is the drawing. It's actually a pretty good drawing, right?
Mhm.
And he's like, oh my god. Okay, well, first, okay. He takes this drawing out, and Amy acts like she's never seen this drawing before, even though she was sitting there and describing what she saw to the sketch artist. Her expression is like, I've never seen this drawing in my life. It's like, you had it drawn. I don't understand.
Where did this
And
come from?
right. So he's like, that's very interesting because, and he goes, Wapam, this is Lizzie Borden when she was older. Doesn't it look just like her? It does kind of look like an older Lizzie Borden. But I was wondering that it might be Eliza, somebody who's listless and frazzled and kind of like,
I can't do this anymore.
right, her postpartum depression. It might be her that's kind of over
That's a
there.
good point.
Yeah. So I thought it might be her. I don't know exactly what Eliza looked like when she was younger. But or at the time of her death. That's what it came to me, especially after you kind of mentioned the postpartum depression thing. So Amy also drops a bombshell. She claims that when she was in the house, she got a sense of incest, but it wasn't between Mr. Borden and his daughters. It was between Emma and Lizzie. Like the older sister orchestrated it with the younger one.
Yeah.
And that's like something that she says that she got from her walkthrough of the house. I didn't see any other accounts of that happening or like suggested that happening. It could explain why Emma and Lizzie had a falling out. But she says that it could have also been stemming from the sexual abuse with Andrew. Um, Amy said to the owners that the dead are tired of being contacted, and she recommended they get rid of all Ouija boards, especially the one under the couch. Like they're just tired of it. They don't want to talk to you. They want to be left alone. Don't bring your Ouija boards in here, she said. They don't care about those anymore. Those
Well,
are
that's
old.
literally that's exactly what I was thinking of. How exhausting would it was would it be to just like have someone reaching out and requesting your energy all the time?
Right.
Like you'd never be able to be at peace.
Right. And it's just like I tried to look up how many investigations have been done at the Lizzie Borden house. I couldn't find like a statistical number, but it has to be up in like the hundreds. And
Oh,
like you,
at
I mean,
least.
it's just like people constantly asking you the same questions over and over. We're just trying to like process your afterlife, Just and with Ouija boards, it's a bad situation.
Well, if you think about the house is open every day year round.
Right.
So that's at least 365 times that someone is in your house with
Right.
the full belief that they're going to have contact with a spirit. That's
Yeah.
just 1 year.
That's crazy. I mean, it's just I would be, if I were a spirit, I would be pissed. But
I'd be doing more than flickering on light switches.
I would be doing more than, I don't know. Yeah, putting around footsteps, opening
Rolling a
drawers.
marble.
Right. Um, so when they show that picture, Amy's like, yeah, that's the person I saw. It's Lizzie Borden as an older lady. I don't think that she would have haunted the Borden house as an older woman. I think that's more if she's anywhere, I feel like she's at Maplecroft. It makes more sense. Why
Mhm.
would you go back to the house where like some awful things happened instead of the place that you kind of like lived out your more peaceful years? She also says that the crazy woman is Lizzie, but a fragment of her spirit from the abuse that she suffered, which
Okay.
Again, we go like with the Horcrux theory of like the spirits are just splintering pieces of themselves off.
Well, so there's a theory when it comes to spirits that it's trapped energy, right?
Right.
So really it could be that energy
True.
specific to the abuse that got trapped. So not her entire soul, but just the negative energy that was around
Maybe.
that
And
abuse.
if that's the case, I don't know. The crazy lady she described is somebody I would not want to meet. But I also think that if she was really as bad as Amy was saying, then other people would have experiences like that
Mm-hmm.
or similar to it. And I
Well, at
didn't
least
get that.
Liz.
Yeah, Liz would, and she was so focused on outing Andrew. So what's happening with the Lizzie Borden house now is I momentarily freaked out, okay, because I did not do some comprehensive reading. I saw a headline that just said Ghost Adventures buys Lizzie Borden house, and I flipped out and I thought Zach Biggins had paid $2 million for this house, but it's U.S. Ghost Adventure Tours. So it's a different company. They've bought the house. They are supposedly going to be making a lot more changes to it to make it more haunted bed and breakfasty. They're going to kind of camp it up, I think. They're also, fun fact, hiring a part-time ghost investigator, like a resident ghost investigator for the house. They're saying they're going to give tours and work with equipment, and it's going to be part-time, but it's going to pay $15 to $25 an hour with tips.
I wonder what the turnover rate on a job like that is. Like, what does their Glassdoor reviews look like?
I don't know. I don't think they've hired anybody yet. This just came out in August
Do you
of
think that it would be poor form to review somebody as mean-spirited?
no. That'd be funny though. They said that the person has to have 1 to 2 years of experience, like with paranormal investigating.
We should contact them after a year of doing this podcast.
Right. Yeah,
I
we're
got it.
ready now. Yeah. We're ready to take this $15 to $25 an hour job. Right. Currently, if you want to stay there, rooms for the night are range from 200 to 350, depending on which room you stay in. And if you want to rent out the whole house for the night, just you and your friends for one whole night, by yourselves, it's 2,100.
That just doesn't seem like a good time for me.
I don't feel like 2,100 of my money should be used to do that.
2,100 of your dollars.
2,100 of my dollars should not go towards camping out with
Well,
Lizzie Borden.
and especially, let me show you this floor plan, because like even if you rent a room, you're like in somebody's business.
Yeah,
That's the
it's like
second floor.
squished in. It's too much. It's too close together with people. So I don't know though. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I didn't think that there would be quite as much stuff online as there is, but like literally all of this came from, my main source was lizzieandrewborden.com,
Yeah,
because they
there's
have
like
so much stuff.
I mean, it's just like a whole. It says right there. It's an archive. All
It
the
is.
stuff.
They went through the transcripts and put them all into one PDF, so you have the entire court document like you would any other legal document. They have all the suspects, they have the case evidence, they have all of the autopsy photos, they have the actual written autopsy where they describe Mrs. Borden as an extremely fleshy woman.
It's crazy.
It's incredibly in depth and gives a lot of information. But I think that there's a lot of speculation and a lot of gap filling,
Right.
careless gap filling, to really know the full story. I don't think anybody will know but Lizzie
Yeah. And maybe Emma.
and Bridget.
Um, and Bridget maybe. Oh, and Andrew and Abby, because they would have seen their killer. So
Well, maybe not Abby.
oh, that's true. She was from behind, so maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
But Andrew.
And
Andrew was
Andrew was
sleeping.
asleep.
Yeah.
The autopsy report said that there was only blood around the wounds. Like there weren't any defense marks on either one
So
of
he
them.
was caught off guard. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, as far as like the paranormal stuff goes, I'll call it haunted. I think that there's been enough evidence over the years. Like, there's so many accounts of people having the footsteps, the light switches, the, you know, brushing by. To I feel like I believe it. I don't believe I tend to like not believe the dead files more than Ghost Adventures. Ghost Adventures is more concrete than I
Well, they
think
had a lot of physical evidence that you could actually see.
and here.
Hmm.
So I would say it's haunted. I don't think it's as sensational as people think it is. I think it's very mundane haunting.
Yeah, I would say that it's haunted. I mean, there's like obvious bad energy, like
Yeah.
bad things have happened there. I have a hard time believing that Lizzie would haunt it though.
No, I don't think that Lizzie Borden is there. I think that it's haunted by Bridget, maybe, Abby, and Andrew for sure. Really like the idea of a cat ghost being there. So we're going to keep that in. And then the two little children, Eliza's children, I think that could very well be there. And maybe Eliza herself.
You think Eliza went by Lizzie?
That might have been because there have been also EVPs reported where somebody's like, "Well, who are you?" And she says, "Lizzie," and it's very like sarcastic. So maybe Eliza's there and she's like tired of people calling her Lizzie, you know? Like, I know you all want to be here for Lizzie, but I'm here and that's all you get.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so definitely haunted. And I think that's it. We're gonna close the book on Lizzie.
Well, hey, great job.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, there it is. The paranormal in all of its glory with the Lizzie Borden house. Are you going to be staying at that bed and breakfast? Again, we hope you guys enjoyed this and will join us next week as we're all back on track with a new episode of paranormal experiences and history behind a state hospital on the West Coast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Haunted or Hoax Pod, Twitter at HORH Pod, and Facebook at Haunted or Hoax. And please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcast. And now you can also rate us on Spotify. I think that's it. Stay safe, guys. Stay healthy, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.